What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys are doing well. And we're going to be doing a fun little video today. And the reason why, at least I think it's fun, is because it's based off a pretty fun article. I've done this video a couple years in a row now. We're going to be doing it again this year. I like doing it. I like reading the article that the video discussion topics come from. And I recommend that you guys, if you have not had the opportunity to see this article yet, do so. I'm not going to be going over the whole thing in this video. Believe me, that would take too long. I'm just going to go over some stuff that I think is interesting from the article. But all you got to do is go to Seahawks.com and check out their Inside the Seahawks Draft Room article. John Boyle wrote it this year. I think he's written it for at least the last few years. So it's kind of an annual tradition with the Seahawks now. I don't know how far back it goes. I obviously know it was done last year and the year before. I can't remember if it was done in 2022. I think it was, but it basically provides some insight, theoretically, into the Seahawks draft room during the draft. So John Boyle, and I think a couple of other people that are helping him as well, I'm not sure, are in the draft room during the process of picks getting made and the team making decisions, and they get to write about it. And a week later, or in this case, we're coming up almost on 2 weeks now, they release the article. So obviously they're not going to discuss this stuff live in real time because it might have an effect on the way the draft goes. The team doesn't want to be giving away too much information about stuff, and even a couple weeks later, some of the information is still a little bit vague and a little bit... There's some redactions in this article, actually. So it's not all being given away, but a decent chunk of it is being given away. And it's a fun read. So, like I said, I'm not going to recap the whole article. I did take some notes on things that I think are interesting. I'm going to go ahead and go over those. But check out the article if you have time. It is a fun read. Now, obviously, there is always going to be some debate on how much to believe the article. Do you believe that the article is actually representing things correctly? Do you believe that the team is representing themselves correctly in terms of how they actually thought? That's always going to be a debate when the team paints things in a way that makes it look like they loved something. There's always going to be some suspicion that they didn't actually love stuff as much as they're portraying and are just trying to sell it a little bit more. So I'll leave that up to you guys. But I'm just going to go ahead and go through my notes here. So day one, just starting with day one, which was the day that I had the most notes on, despite the fact that we only had the one pick, because that's where most of the interesting information was. So the article actually starts about little less than halfway through the first round, right after the Cowboys picked Tyler Booker. Tyler Booker at number 12 overall. And one thing the article pointed out was that after that Tyler Booker pick, and let me jump down to it a little bit here. It should be pretty easy to find here. So when the Cowboys made that pick, apparently there were still 7 players left on their board with first-round grades. So at that point, they were guaranteed to have access to at least 2 of them, right? Because 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So only 5 more players can go. You've got 7 players left on your board with first-round grades. That means at that point you're chilling, which is pretty interesting because one of the reports that came out right before the draft was the Seahawks kind of had eyes on 2 players, Tet McMillan and Gray Zabel, and if they couldn't get one of those, they wanted to trade back. And this implies otherwise. So hopefully this is true, because if this is true, that means the Zabel thing wasn't a leak. It was just at least partial misinformation. But that's certainly interesting. They have 7 players left on their board with first-round grades after the Tyler Booker pick, which would imply, and not that it's a guarantee this is the case, But the interesting thing about that to me is that it implies that Tyler Booker was not a first-round player on their board, and he wasn't on mine either, so that wouldn't terribly surprise me, admittedly. But it was kind of interesting that they chose that pick to come in with their initial update about how many first-round grades they had left. So there's an implication that they like the fact that Booker went at 12 because they didn't think that highly of him. And it's also said at this part of the article that the interior lineman they like the best is Gray Zabel. So that implies they liked Zabel more than Booker, which I think is pretty reasonable. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but I think it's at least very reasonable. I think it's close. So maybe an implication that they saw Booker as somebody they were hoping would go early because they didn't like him as much. And Zabel being their favorite interior lineman is, I think, reasonable as long as you're not looking at some of the tackles as interior converts. Like, if you look at Armand Membeau as an interior lineman, I would hope that you like him more than Gray Zabel. If you're looking at Will Campbell as an interior lineman, I think that he has to be better than Zabel. But if you're looking at those guys as tackles, that obviously changes things a little bit. All right, so one other thing in this article was emphasis on the fact that John Schneider is collaborating with a lot of other people when he's making these picks. And there's a long list of people that he collaborates with during the process. Heinlein, Kirchner, Matt Berry, Willie Schneider. I assume there's a relation. It'd be kind of weird if there wasn't. Chuck Arnold, Burt Cold, Jody Allen was there. Obviously, Mike McDonald is there. So there was some emphasis on the fact that this is a team effort, even if Schneider is ultimately the guy who makes the final decision. So you would certainly hope that's the case, but it's certainly good to hear. A little bit later in the article, the Seahawks apparently liked the fact that the Cardinals took Walter Nolan, and so did I, because I'm not a big Walter Nolan guy. And according to this, the Seahawks had another target in mind. Now, I don't know why they would want to take Walter Nolan anyway, because he's a 3-tech, and they have more than enough of that. But I do find it interesting that there's like a little bit of an implication that they didn't like Walter Nolan very much, because I didn't care for him that much, and very much famously, Hawk's Nest, the guy that I stream with frequently, also did not like him at all. So I guess that's kind of cool. Not that that necessarily means anything. Either he'll be good or he won't be good, but there you go. We are in alignment on that front. And if you scroll down a little bit more with the Bengals on the clock, so this is the pick right before Seattle picked, apparently Seattle thought there were 4 first-rounders left on the board. And we know who 2 of them are, and we don't know for sure who the other 2 are. And we also know that this must mean that 3 first-rounders went off the board between the Cowboys pick and the Bengals pick. Maybe one of them was Ken Grant. Maybe one of them was Tyler Warren. Hard to know for sure. That's what I would guess. I would guess those 2 guys would be the first-rounders left on the board. But it's certainly interesting to get the numbers and at the very least be able to make educated guesses on who they valued and where. So again, the numbers would be 7 first-rounders left after 12, 4 first-rounders left after 16, and therefore, I believe 2 guys that we don't know about. At least in terms of them having a first-round grade on them. We know that they went somewhere between 19 and 34. I should say 19 and 32. We just don't know who. So there was a trade on the table. We don't know with who. We don't get to find out who wanted to trade at certain spots unless the trade actually happens. That information gets redacted from these articles. But the Seahawks decided they didn't want to trade back because they really liked Zabel. And they were also, I guess, a little bit concerned about missing out on players that they wanted if they traded back, which I think is probably the right thing to do. The article then goes on to say that they knew they wanted Zabel immediately, but decided to milk the clock just for fun. Who knows if that's true or not? Who knows if that's just them trying to hide the fact that they also were interested in maybe trading the pick? Who knows? I'm not going to speculate too much on that. I know that you guys in the comment section will be doing your speculation and, have fun with that, but it's hard to figure out. Talking more about Zabel a little bit later, one thing that's emphasized in this article is that the first time the Seahawks really noticed Zabel was at the Senior Bowl. They thought he looked really good at the Senior Bowl. And if they're talking about the practices, they are certainly correct. Talking about the game, which is arguably less important anyway, I don't think it was quite so impressive. But again, the practices are really what you go to the Senior Bowl for. And the final thing that came out of the day one coverage that caught my attention, there's other fun stuff in here too, which is why you guys should go read the article as well. They started trading up or trying to trade up into the start of day two so they could get Emanwari at the end of day one. So they were working the phones at the end of the first round, trying to trade up, not just to the top of the second, but the back end of the first. They were actually trying to get up into like that 30, 31, 32 range to get Emanwari. That didn't happen, obviously. We did not trade up. We got Emanwari the next day. But it's notable that in this article, it is postulated that the team immediately gravitated towards Emanwari and saw a really good opportunity to get him with the when he slipped to the late first round. By the way, sorry about my shirt. I just realized it's making a weird effect with the green screen, whatever. So that was basically the end of day one. Some of the day two notes, obviously the trade happened very early. Again, it seemed like a pretty reasonable and fair trade to me. Not much to say about that other than that they were really excited to get him, and I think they were correct. They got somebody that they thought was a first rounder, and by the way, I believe them when they say they thought Emanwari was a first rounder. A lot of people did. I personally did by a very small margin, but I did think he was a first rounder. And I don't think it was an uncommon belief that Emanwari was worthy of being a first round pick. So obviously that's pretty exciting. They really like that one. One thing that caught my attention was that the Seahawks, when their pick was getting there at 50, the Rams picked Terrence Ferguson, Oregon tight end, and the Seahawks liked that move because they wanted to draft a tight end, but they wanted a different tight end. So they liked Elijah Arroyo more than they liked Terrence Ferguson, which I wasn't enamored with either personally. I don't think it's unreasonable to like one more than the other either way. So that's just something kind of interesting, I guess. They were not getting sniped on Ferguson. At least it doesn't seem like that. And there's also some discussion about a trade. Apparently the Seahawks did have a trade on the table for 50, a few picks before 50 came up, but they had already decided with a couple of picks left that they were only going to trade the pick if Arroyo was gone. If Arroyo was there, there would be no trade and they would just take Arroyo. So they really did like him. I will say that. According to this article, they really liked Arroyo. So I find that to be interesting. Obviously, I'm not the biggest fan of Arroyo, but if this article is to be believed, then they really, really aggressively targeted him. And I know there are some people that like him a lot more than me. Maybe there is something there. It happens all the time, guys. It happens all the time that people that I didn't think was going to be that great end up being good and vice versa. There was also some stuff in this article talking about the Milroe pick, which obviously was a very splashy pick. There's some talk about how the Seahawks are discussing the chief communications officer into the discussion, which means that basically most likely what he was saying to Lane and Pearson, those are the two guys that he had a conversation with. It implies that he's saying, look, this pick is going to get a lot of attention. Be ready for it because those guys are the people who are going to be in charge of that stuff. Now, if you're wondering why there's been no call released about the Milroe pick, Apparently, they could not record it, so there's nothing to really release there. I believe our draft calls have been released for every player except Milroe, and for Milroe, they were not able to make the call from the right phone, so they weren't able to get that recording. So if you're waiting for it, you're going to keep waiting. It doesn't exist. But that's about the only interesting thing I saw there. One thing that McDonald said at the end of day 2 that kind of caught my attention, talking about Arroyo. Well, first of all, he talked about Zabel and Emanwari, 2 players they thought were first-round caliber. And he went on to say this: Arroyo may have been a top 15 caliber player if not for his injury history. That's what Schneider said. Now, oh man, I know some people really liked him. I know some people did actually have him in the first round. I understand that. Top 15, if not for the injuries, I am having a hard time swallowing that one. And I'm not necessarily saying he's lying. I'm just saying I can't see it the way that he's seeing it. I'm thinking about Elijah Arroyo with what we know about him, which is not as much as we would like because of the injuries. I don't see top 15 pick there. I don't see those special attributes that a top 15 tight end needs to have. I don't see the Brock Bowers stuff. I don't see even the Colston Loveland stuff. And I didn't like Loveland that much. I would not have put him in the top 15 either. The Tyler Warren stuff. I look at all these tight ends that have been in or around the top 15. And then I look at Arroyo. I'm having a hard time with that one, people. That's something that seems way off base to me. If not for the injuries, yeah, I'd say he probably should be a top 100 pick, right? If not for the injuries, I'd say he should probably be a third rounder. But I mean, we took him in the second round, even with the injuries. So obviously, there's just a big divide there, and that's fine. So that was it for day 2. There was a little bit of interesting information in this article on day 3. Without going into every little detail, again, read the article. It didn't seem like we got sniped on Ayo Minor. Apparently, Seattle was talking about trading the pick well before that pick actually came up. So my impression was that we wanted Ayo Minor at our first day 3 pick. It was like 137. And when he got sniped, we traded the pick as kind of a panic thing. If this article is to be believed, that's not the case. We were planning on moving down before that pick came in. So I don't know what Ayo Minor did, but it was apparently something pretty bad because I thought he was a second round guy. A lot of people did. And he just kept going and going and going. There was one blurb in this article, if you scroll down a little bit, that there was an implied interest in the Miami linebacker Francisco Mauigoa, but they weren't able to get him because the Jets got him. It was implied. It wasn't directly stated. The way it's phrased in the article, though, makes me feel like there was something going on there. So, worth noting, Mauigoa was interesting, but I was a little bit surprised he got drafted. So, I don't know if we would have actually gone and done it. I wonder if maybe he was a UDFA target. One thing from the article that was kind of cool, and this is something that the Seahawks did last year as well, area scouts are getting to make the initial calls to tell the player that they're getting picked, rather than Schneider or McDonald in some cases. Like, they use the example of the Robbie Oots pick. Somebody in the comments told me it's Oots, by the way. I hope it is. But Robbie Oots, when he got called, he did not get called by Schneider or McDonald. He got called by the area scout that actually did work with him. And Gray Zabel actually got to make the call to Mason Richmond to tell him he was getting drafted. So, also kind of fun. And that's really about it. That's about all I can say about this article in terms of stuff that I thought was really attention-grabbing, like stuff that we learned something from or something that provided insight into the way the Seahawks were thinking. There's a lot of other fun stuff in there, though. Like I said, go check the article out on your own time, read through all the timestamps, and have a ball with it. I know I did. So, yeah, that's what I can say about the Inside the Draft Room coverage this year. Who knows how much of it is true? Who knows how much of it is honest? But it's still a fun read. And at the end of the day, the reality is we'll never get to know for sure on this stuff because we're not in there. We're not in there during the process of them building their draft board over months and months. And we're not there in the draft room. So we just got to go with it and hope that they are truly as excited about this stuff as they indicate they are. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Maybe another video later today, maybe not. But like I said, I think I'm going to be starting the deep dives tomorrow. We'll see. But it's going to be about a 2-week process once we get started, I think. And that'll take us to the, that'll basically take us to the slow season in the summer. Maybe I'll do the schedule release before I start the deep dives. But other than that, go Hawks.